Hello guys, I'm going to be taking you through the solution of project number one, your introduction to the C++ programming language. Now, if you do still find yourself getting stuck after we have reviewed the solution, if there's concepts that you'd like to cover in further detail, please refer to the material online. We also offer private tutoring, as I've mentioned before, so that is available to you in order to speed up your progress. So just wanted to make you aware of those options. Now, without any further delay, let's jump into it. So this was supposed to be a program used to calculate the age of a person by entering the date of birth. So we start with our preprocessor, which is IOStream. So that's going to be necessary for dealing with inputs, outputs. If you get rid of that, instantly you start to get errors in your program. If you were trying to do inputs and outputs, then what the next bit is quite easy to forget sometimes, which is the namespace declaration to tell the compiler which sort of dictionary or set of keywords you're going to be using to define and write your program. Okay. Then we get into our main function, which is going to encapsulate all of our code that's going to actually be running there. And the first thing we do is start thinking about variables, right? Start thinking about what data are we going to interact with. So that's going to be some integers for the current day, current month, year, and then the birthday, month, and then the year, right? So essentially what we're doing here is we're subtracting the birthday from the current day, the birth month from the current month, and then the birth year from the current year. Then we store the results in DMY for day, month, year, respectively. And then we have here current day 2, current month 2, current year 2. That will come into play later on. You'll see why. It's just to store some intermediate calculations for the month, day, and year without changing the values for the original ones, right? So after that, we want to request that data from the user. We want to then collect it, right? We want to store it. So we're using the cout object and the insertion operator to then print out this message here on the screen. So enter the current day, and then the cin object and the extraction operator to store that into the current day variable, okay? So next thing we're doing is the same for the current month, then for the current year, and then we get the birthday, birth month, birth year. So we've got both sets of data, right? The current day, so that the program knows what to compare it to. And then we have the birthday, month, year. Okay. So that's it there. Now we can start analyzing that data and doing those calculations, given that we have everything that we need, right? And for that, we're going to be using some if statements. So I'm going to be going over the conditions that we've set and what we're actually doing with those, so that you can understand what's happening behind the scenes. So with this first if statement, the condition is that the birthday is before or equal to the current day. The birth and the birth month is before or equal to the current month. Or the birth year is before or equal to the current year. So it's basically this first condition that I've translated to you and one of these two. The birth month is before equal to the current month, or birth year is before or equal to the current year. And if that's the case, this is really the simplest of our outcomes. It's pretty straightforward. All we're doing, as I mentioned to you, is subtracting the birthday from the current day, birth month from the current month, birth year from the current year. But if it was only just that, we wouldn't have the rest of the program. And as you can imagine, the calculation itself can become a bit more complex with other scenarios. So let's go and cover those. But overall, the main thing I want you to just bear in mind is that all these different scenarios will revolve around these three calculations, right? So we're calculating the difference in day, the difference in month, and the difference in year. There's going to be slightly a few variables here and there. Don't let them confuse you. At the end of the day, this is all that we're doing. We're just accounting for different scenarios. The next scenario is that if birthday is equal to or before the current day, and birth month is after the current month, and birth year is before the current year. So in this scenario, we can just subtract the birthdays normally, okay? But then for the month, we need to subtract the birth month from the current month plus 12, okay? So we actually add 12 to that current month because, as you can imagine, we cannot subtract December, for example, from November. That's not something that we can do, right? So to get around that, this is what we do. And then for the year, we have to adjust it because we've added 12 months to get the difference in months, right? But then for the year, we need to subtract an extra year. So we subtract the birth year from the current year, and then additionally another year to make up for these 12 months. So that's what's happening with this condition. So it's a bit of a tricky one when you have the actual birth month that's actually past the current month, because it does change that calculation just the slightest bit. The next one will be similar to that, and it will follow some of those same principles. But in this one, it's the birthday that is higher than the current day. So instead of the month, we have the birthday being past or after that current day, and we have the birth month being before the current month, the birth year being before the current year, right? So what do we do here? So if the current month has 31 days, which all these months do, then we add 31 days to the, to the current day, and then subtract the birthday, right? Then when subtracting the birth month from the current month, we subtract an additional one to make up for these 31 days that we've added to figure out the difference in the days, okay? And then the current year, because it is before, because the birth year is before the current year, there's nothing special going on here. We really are adjusting for the day, okay? And then we're adding, actually we're subtracting an extra month to make up for that adjustments. Now these if statements here will follow the exact same pattern. The only difference is that now we're dealing with months that have 29 days, with months that have 28 days, and in the case of the month has 30 days. So the current month has 30 days, okay? So that's it. And again, we're doing that same exact calculation, but because we have a few different things to adjust for, such as the day there and then the month afterwards, it can look a bit more complicated. But when you look at all this, really the only difference is that we're going to be adjusting for 31 days, 29 days, 28, and 30. So don't let the different if statements kind of put you off or frighten you. There's nothing really fancy going on there. It's quite simple once you go through it. So the next one, the next condition is likely the most complex of them all. And in this case, we have the birthday being after the current day. We have also the birth month being after or equal to the current month. And lastly, the year is fine. So the birth year is before the current year. So in this type of scenario, again, we're dealing with those days. We're adjusting for those days by adding them on when we're doing that calculation. So we add current day plus 31 before subtracting it from the birthday. But this time, and we're subtracting the extra month as we were before, right? But then in this case also, we are adding 12 extra months to deal with the fact that the birth month is after the current month. Remember, we cannot subtract December from November, so we need to adjust it by adding 12 months to the current month. And then we can always adjust that when we look at the year calculation, right? So just to recap, we're adding days onto the current day so that we can subtract the birthday. And then to fix that, we're adding that extra day that extra month that's being subtracted from the current month. But then we have the other problem of the birth month being after the current month. So we also have to account for that. And this is where these 12 extra months comes from, which we adjust by removing 1 year when we get to the year calculation. So if you've noticed the pattern up to this point, all these if statements, the only thing that we're dealing with here are scenarios where the birthday is after the current day. In this case, we add, we add a month worth of days to the current day to be able to do that subtraction. And then if you have a scenario where the birth month is after the current month, then we add 12 months to the current month to make that calculation possible. And then we're always adjusting. So in here, we added, we added 12 months. So we subtract one year to the current year to fix that, that calculation. So again, it's the same as above here, but we're dealing with 29 days. Here we're dealing with 28 days. How do we know we're dealing with 28 days or 29 days for the month of February? We have to see if it is divisible by 4. If the current year is divisible by 4, then we know we're dealing with a leap year, so that's 29. Otherwise, we are dealing with just a regular year, and it's 28 days. Finally, we've got the months that have 30 days in here, which are all of these. And it's the same pattern throughout. We go ahead and we add 30 days to the current day. We subtract the birthday. For the month, we actually have to go in and add those 12 months because the birth date is after the current month. And we subtract 1 to make up for these 30 days that we've added here for the current day. So it's just something that we need to bear in mind. And then lastly, we subtract 1 year because we've added 12 months when we did the month calculation. Okay, so after all that, we print out the results in the form of some statements. So we use the cout object, the insertion operator, to insert this data onto the output stream. And then we have the variable here for d, which represents the difference, and that would get printed out. Then we have NL, which basically ends that line, acting sort of like a line break, and we go on to the next statement. So as I mentioned here, let's do a quick recap. So we have our preprocessor namespace just kind of set up before we get to our actual function, our main function, which will run our code. And we're declaring our variables, thinking about what data are we dealing with, where are we going to store it. We then request the information from the user, we store it in our variables, and then we analyze it. We do the actual subtraction, right, of the day, of the month, and the year. If the birthday is before the day, the current day, if the birth month is before the current month, or the birth year is before the current year, it's really straightforward. We just do subtraction 1 to 1. It only really gets a bit more complex once we start looking at scenarios where, for example, the birth month is higher than the current month, meaning you can't subtract December from November if that was the case. And then we just add 12 months to the current month before calculating the difference in months, and we subtract an extra year when we're dealing with that. So it's the same principle that is later applied to days, where we add 31 days. For example, if the birthday is after the current month, and that of course depends on the current month. Does it have 31 days? Does it have 29 days? And so on and so forth. So that's been the solution for the project. Again, if you do need any further additional support, reach out to us on the platform, and help is available. Thank you so much.